What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. I'm currently in Pennsylvania today at Two Feathers Productions. Ryan's standing back here, and we're going to hear a lot from him throughout this video. Today, I'm going to be showing you guys how Ryan brings the mini workhorse, the collaboration blade between myself and him, how he brings these to life. Now, before we get into the video, I do want to say thank you so much to everyone out there who has placed an order. It's been pretty much overwhelming at this point, so as of right now, all of the blades are marked as sold out over on his website. The plan is to have all of the blades made and shipped by the end of next month, so if you have already placed an order, again, thank you so much, and hopefully you will be receiving your blade soon. After hearing all of the feedback from you guys out there who have already received a blade or simply just commented on the video, actually I'll leave that video right up here if you haven't seen this blade already, we are already starting to work on another variant. So once all the blades come back in stock, there's going to be something new, and you guys will see that on my Instagram. I might make a video on it too, and it's something that I've hinted at very heavily already. And there's even more to that. We're working on a lot of stuff here, so I'm excited to share all this stuff with you guys. So now you guys are gonna see some behind the scenes of how the mini workhorse comes to life. Let's go over and see what Ryan's working on right now. What's up, dude?
What's going on?
This is Ryan, and we're just gonna jump right into this blade making process. I know a little bit about this stuff already, so as we are going through all the steps, I'm gonna ask him some random questions just to fill you guys in a little bit more. So starting with the blank material, what is this stuff right here?
All right, so we got a piece of 5160, so it's 1/4 inch thick, about 1.5 inches wide. So what I originally started with was your drawing you sent me. I just cut that out.
I just drew this on an iPad after like taking his workhorse design and kind of scaled it down. So that's how you started with the original blade.
Right, that's how I started tracing them. Paper's not gonna last, obviously, so I just used my mini workhorse as everyone's template. So I get to pull scales off all the time and trace it out.
Now we've already had a few questions of like, how do you start knife making? Do you need a bunch of tools and stuff like that? And he's about to show us right now, you don't need any kind of crazy tools to do all this.
No.
So what are you gonna use to cut this out?
So I'm using just an angle grinder with a cutoff wheel. I've seen people make blades start to finish with just an angle grinder. So you change the wheels out a little bit, but other than that, they did everything.
Yeah.
So they were working with already hardened steel, which you'd have to go slow, but yeah.
You could do everything with Harbor Freight tools.
You could. I mean, it's not gonna be fun per se to continue that way, but if you just wanna make one or two, yeah.
So that's the whole grinding process. You just ground straight down to the line. Is that a 220 grit or what is this?
This is a 36 grit.
36 grit, okay. 220 is when you get more into polishing, I guess.
Yeah, once it's that finished bevel, that's where I stop at, it's 220.
How long do these belts last?
So different belts, they'll last different time. These are Cubitron belts. I did 9 blades shaping them before it was time to put a new belt.
Okay, and you can just kind of tell that by the feel of it?
Yeah, it starts really slowing down when you're grinding.
And then the wheel too also helps.
Yeah, the serrated wheel definitely helps.
And is this metal too, or is that like rubber? Hard rubber?
This is just hard rubber.
Okay.
Like you can see where I screwed up and scored the rubber a little bit, grinding a couple times.
Yeah, takes the material off super fast.
Yeah.
So now it's time for holes?
Yep, so we're gonna find center and drill our holes here.
So for these, it looks like you're using a caliper and then you just find the center point?
Yep, so we're just measuring the width here. Well, first I'm gonna do every hole at the bottom is only a 1/2 inch up, so we'll mark that line quick.
Now moving over to the drill press. Ryan mentioned that depending on what bits you use, they can actually vary slightly. So he actually checks these with a caliper again.
Just to make sure that they're at 1/4 inch.
Then you could use machine bits, which are like expensive as hell, but
we're good.
Don't really last that much longer.
So,
Cool. All right, holes are drilled.
holes are drilled. We're all shaped out. So people typically use die cam. I'm just gonna use a Sharpie because it works the same.
So what are you marking here? This is to make the bevel, so you know how far in you're
So
going?
right now I'm just gonna mark this, and then we're gonna find center of the blade
Oh,
currently.
and then you scribe it so that
Yes.
it shows through. Cool.
This is why we double check everything. So it's 1/4 inch, but it's over. So we're at 265. So it'd be like 132 and a half. And all that is to make sure that we don't go past center. We're gonna leave a gap on either side for our bevels because this is all pre-heat treat. So all of our blades, when they're finished, are flat ground blades, but we start by hollow grinding because we can remove more material away, and it also helps where our spines will end up being like 55 Rockwell and our edges will be 60, 61
Okay.
because this will be thinner and we have all this material to absorb heat. So at this point here is where we're ready to heat treat. So we got one ready to go into the kiln once we get it up to temp, and we won't touch the grinder until tempering process is done. So complete heat treat.
So one of the questions that I had earlier on was, this isn't the full finished bevel, so you're
Right.
leaving some material on there, that way when you heat it up it's not going to deform?
Yeah, so it won't warp, so we're not gonna warp our edge. Plus in the tempering process, because it's thinner, this edge will cool down and hold that edge faster. So it'll be harder here and softer here. That way we can baton it, we can do whatever, but there's flex to the knife.
We can chuck it into the target
Yeah,
over
we can do
there.
that, like, we can end up doing that here in a bit.
Now for the kiln, how long does this thing take to get up to temperature? It's at ambient temperature right now, 60.
First temp we're gonna go to is 1625.
1625, you put it in there for however long and that will equalize it.
Yep, so well, it's normalizing, yep.
Normalizing, okay.
So we're taking all the grain and making it exactly the same in the steel. This will probably take about 20 minutes to get to temp.
Okay, that's not too terrible, but when you're doing 100 blades,
It's a lot.
it's a lot. That's a long time. So you actually have different selections here. Normalize, you have a temper setting,
Yep.
and you programmed all of this stuff
Right.
specific for your blades, basically.
Yep.
Cool.
So again, we're getting ready to do the normalized process, and then what we'll do is we'll go into an actual quench cycle.
All right, a few minutes later, kiln is ready to go, sitting at about 1625. That's the sweet spot, right?
Yep, for normalizing.
Now you gotta stick this blade in the center of this. Dangerous. Probably stand back. I'll get a suntan.
So we'll let that sit in there for 15 minutes.
All right, 15 minutes. It's like sticking your hand into the sun. Damn. You can smell it.
And then we let that air cool.
All right, some time has passed again. Blade is now cooled down to where you can touch it.
Yep, so what else we're doing is bringing it down to like room temp. So as long as I can handle it, we're good. And now we'll start the quench process.
So it's going back in the kiln at 1475 for how long this time? 15 again, or
No, this time we're gonna do it for 12 minutes.
12 minutes? And when it comes to the actual quench, is this filled with oil right now?
Yes.
Is there any kind of specific oil, or is it just...
So it's Parks 50.
Okay,
It's a 7-second quench oil.
so it's made for this.
Yes.
And Ryan said, because I had to ask, I said, are there going to be flames? He said, typically not, but he can make flames if we want flames. So we'll see how this goes once it's up to temp. Time for the quench. Oh.
There you go.
There it is.
There you go.
So that was pretty fast there. Pulled it out, quenched it, drop, you said, to 600 degrees?
Yep, so we're only in there for like 7 seconds, and we go from 1475 to around 600.
And then right into this
And we drop it in the
press.
plates so that it keeps it straight while it's finishing cooling down.
And then what does the air do?
I'm just aiding in cooling it down.
Okay, so it's blowing air in there
Yep.
to get it started. How long does that sit there now?
We'll let it sit there for roughly 8 minutes.
Okay. And then the secret sauce. You guys won't see that.
Right.
But
we,
we'll be back in a second.
absolutely.
The secret sauce has been applied. But you guys will never know. So now we're moving on to handles.
So we're just tracing out the blade here with a scribe, just so we have something to grind to so we know about handle shape.
And this is the layered G10 that you guys see on the finished product, which looks black right now, but obviously layers in there. And then with the contouring that he does, it allows you to see all the different colors.
Right. Everything is done by hand, every step of the way.
Everything, even shipping. Probably the worst part of this whole process.
So now we're just gonna cut that out, and then we'll grind just to the lines.
What's up, guys? We're back for round 2. It is now the next day. Ryan is getting the shop all prepared for the work we're doing today. The reason we're working on this the next day is because Ryan just went through the process known as tempering, which basically takes the blade and solidifies the grain structure from its super hard state down into a usable blade. That way it's not so brittle and you can put an edge on it and then use it. This is basically how the knives are going to ship to you. So the process started in the oven at, what was it, 400 degrees?
Yeah, 405.
So 405, and then it has to basically cool down to ambient temperature before you even do that. So it takes, what, 3 hours roughly?
Roughly.
So it's a long process, which is why this is probably one of the longest processes of blade making.
Absolutely, and I don't have to let it cool down as much, but I've gotten good results, so this is just how I'll handle it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So this is why the blades are not just shipping super fast. People think that it's just like, oh, you just cut out steel and send it.
Right.
So this is the long process. You're doing full batches at once. Like right now, this is one of, there's probably 16 more.
Yeah.
So this is number 17.
Right, so we're doing one for now just to show the process, but you gotta multiply all the times that you're seeing times however many blades there are.
Right. So now this thing is not brittle. If you drop it, it won't shatter into a
Nope.
bunch of pieces. Nice. What if it didn't temper correctly and it just
I
exploded?
would have laughed. That would have been great. Like, eat your words kind of thing.
Whoops. So now for day 2, we're moving on to the next step.
All right, so next up we're just gonna do handles here. So,
You guys watch him cut out the G10 handles right here. I'm gonna glue those into place and drill the holes. I'll let Ryan explain all of it.
yep. I go close to shape, and then what we'll do is I just use super glue to hold it on so I can drill through and get your holes lined up properly. Once we do both sides, we'll go to the grinder and you'll see how we finish shaping it out. Let that sit for a minute and we'll drill holes. Alright,
Starting to look like a mini workhorse.
it's getting there. Now we're just gonna, I gotta change the grinder around a little bit and we'll get this all flushed up. So I'm just gonna flush these guys up and then we'll put our angles on.
So now Ryan's setting up his grinder to shape the angles around the outside, the part where you're mainly contacting the G10, and then he'll rotate this entire thing. I think someone already asked what kind of grinder this is. So what
it's
is
a
this?
TW90 from Travis Words.
From Forge and Fire,
Yes.
that Travis. So this whole thing will rotate, and then that's how he gets the actual contour of the handle.
Right.
So it
it's nice. You
fits
don't
in.
need 2 different grinders, so I can grind vertically or
Dang.
I can just spin the whole thing, and now the different work rests we have. I don't.
That's pretty rad.
Yeah.
So Ryan just mentioned that the handles is one thing that is going to be completely different on everyone's blade because it's all basically done by feel, which is how the entire process kind of goes because they're obviously all handmade and custom, but he can match these up to make sure they're the same, basically based off of the layers of the G10, so he knows like how many lines he's going in. But that is one thing that's definitely going to be completely custom and different for every single blade that comes out of the shop.
Right, so people that order 2 different mini workhorses, you might have slight different width of bevel.
And that's what's cool about it. I love that aspect of it all.
Yeah. That's the thing too, like with the layers, like you can start to see the black wanting to show through here, and there it started showing a little bit sooner.
Yeah, so it's just a tiny bit different.
Right, they're all gonna be different. Some people have a black line, or just the center will be black, but they're all just a little different. Now we'll start bevels. We'll finish it down, clean it up, get logos on it, sharpen and sheath. This is a 1, 2, 3 block.
1, 2, 3 block.
Yeah.
So that's how you can find if it's perfectly zeroed again.
Right. Just double check to make sure because we're at 0 here on the gauge. Like if I do that, I can't see any light.
Right.
So we bring it to the side. So that's how we make sure that this is 0 and we can set our slope set.
So now the bevels are completely on this blade, basically ready for sharpening. What kind of belt are you putting on there now?
So this is a Scotch-Brite belt, and basically what I'm doing is taking the rest of the slag from the heat treatment process off, kind of making it shiny.
So this will be like one of the first actual finishing steps.
Yep.
So now that all the slag is off, we're moving on to the logos, and then it goes in the ferric for like the final finishing coat on there. Now this is a point where in like fancy art knife making, people could put mirror polishes and all sorts of like fancy touches on them, but Ryan and I were just talking, these are tools. This is stuff that we actually like to use. I do have some like fancy style knives, but that's really not what I'm into. I'm into the actual tool of having a knife and using it, so we just skip all of that fancy stuff and go right into the finishing to make a functional, still a piece of art. I mean, it's all handmade, like, it's still cool. It's just not flashy and fancy because you don't need that stuff.
No, you don't, and you're not gonna use it. It's gonna sit on your shelf or your nightstand. You'll display it. I'm hoping that everybody uses these. Cut, dig, fry, throw them, doesn't matter.
Do whatever you want with it. So the logos on each side of this knife are, it's technically acid etching, right?
Yeah, it's electro etching.
Electro etching. So put a sticker on to preserve where the logo is going to stand out. I have not seen this process yet, so I'm not exactly sure how it works, but lines up the logos on each side, SEI on the right, 2 feathers on the left, and then the magic happens.
Just the current grounding out through the acid burning into the steel.
So this is the results of the electro etching. This is another thing that's going to be a little bit different on every single blade, which is kind of cool. Now, one more step.
So this is ferric chloride. We make the blades like that dark gray. Since it's a high carbon steel, it's just gonna help resist some rust. But it wears off, you get neat little score marks in your coating and all that.
It's a tool, you gotta take care of it.
Yeah, then you get your own little battle scars, right? Like, your blade tells its own story.
That's the best. So that blade will sit in there for a minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, however long. It'll get a little bit darker and it'll basically change. depending on how long you leave it in there. And then Windex has ammonia in it, as opposed to just using regular ammonia. Ryan used to do that in the past, and he said it was not pleasant.
No, it's not pleasant at all.
I can imagine.
It smells like there's a whole bunch of litter boxes.
So now that is going to neutralize the reaction that's going on there. You can get it wiped off and get the blade prepped for handles. Water displacement. That gives it such a cool look.
A little WD-40 on the rag with some buffing compound. And we'll smooth this out a little bit. Not bad.
Handle time.
Handle time.
Getting the hardware installed. So these are threaded standoffs.
Yep, so there's going through the actual blade, and then our screws go down into.
These are not like epoxied or glued on, so it's all serviceable. You guys can take them apart and oil them if you need to, or change out the handle scales, whatever you really want to do with it.
Right. The handle scales are a little tough to get off, but once you pop all the screws out like a razor blade tucked in the corner, just careful, but you can start working it and it'll break it free. We're gonna do a sheath, and then we'll sharpen this guy and it's ready to go.
That's it. Feels like a mini workhorse. Now, instead of making this video longer than it needs to be, Ryan already has some sheaths right here. You guys know how this stuff is made. Kydex, trace it out, cut it together, get all the hardware through, and now he's prepping the blade because each sheath is designed specific for the knife that goes with it. So even more customization to it. So he's taping up the blade with painter's tape. That way it gives it a little bit of space in between there. That way you're not rubbing up the blade too much on the Kydex. And then most of the retention, I guess, comes from the handle scales.
The handle scale, yep.
Yeah.
So it locks around this blade portion and the handle scale. Out of the toaster oven.
The Hamilton Beach Kydex oven.
High-tech stuff.
Into a foam press.
That's where we'll leave it for now.
All right, the sheath has cooled down now. Tighten that up and throw the clip on there.
Yeah, we'll throw the clip on after a little bit. It's still a little too warm and it'll end up indenting into the Kydex pretty bad.
Okay.
For now, we're just gonna run these tight so that it holds while it finishes cooling.
Getting closer and closer to completion. Time for the Ulti clip. I've gotten some questions asked about this. You can swap it to the opposite side if you're a lefty. The clip is positioned on the outside of the knife if you're right-handed because of the way it can cant inside your pocket, but you can put it basically however you want. And it's Kydex, so you can just cut it and drill your own holes and put different clips on it.
Like tech locks work great.
You can do whatever you want with them, basically.
Right. Because again, yeah, it's just Kydex. It's not hard to drill a hole through that.
Ooh, that pop.
We'll sharpen it up, oil it up, and this one's ready to go.
Final step before shipping, sharpening. This is one thing that I've always wanted to see you do because he sent me videos and you can see him on his Instagram of you just destroying stuff right after a fresh sharpen. So
I used to do it with just a micron belt, and then I start with a 220 to set the bevel, and then we polish it up with a micron and then the buffing wheel. So. There you go.
that is insane how fast that is.
Oh, knocked it right off before the blade popped out, but there you go.
Push cut right through that.
So, there you go. Ready to go out to the next person.
So there you guys have it from start to finish, just blank materials and everything that Ryan does here in the shop, all done completely by hand. Another thing I asked him about was shipping. I was like, you don't do like boxes or anything? and your explanation of it made a whole lot of sense. So why don't you do boxes and stuff like that?
Well, it's just gonna drive the cost up. The other thing is, I don't save any of the boxes.
I do on like expensive knives, but on a tool like that,
Right.
it's just cluttering up your basement or your closet, whatever.
So it's just gonna come in an envelope, hand wrapped by me, and
Yeah, all of his shipping stuff is found right over here in this corner. So he does the shipping too, just boxes everything up, or I should say puts it in the envelope and make sure it's all padded, and then it comes to your door. He doesn't hand deliver them. For
No.
anyone who might have that misconception.
Right, yeah, I can't be doing that.
And he can't be doing that, but everything else he's doing from start to finish. So there you guys go. If you have any questions on these things, let us know in the comments down below. I'm sure he'll jump in and answer some. I'll answer anything that I can as best as possible. Might have to write a note for this knife. Be like, check out this video. This is where this one was made.
Right, yeah,
So
we'll do that for sure.
I'll handwrite a note to whomever gets this blade. As far as everything else goes, like I mentioned in the beginning, we do have another variant coming out, which I've already kind of hinted at before, but because of your feedback and your support with this whole project, we're gonna have some new stuff coming out. A variant that I mentioned, and behind the scenes during this video, we're also working on something else, which
It's
is
gonna be very exciting.
sitting on the bench right here. It's going to be so sick. So stay tuned. Follow him on Instagram for more shop updates. He's going to be keeping you guys updated over there on the batch numbers and things like that. I think that's it. So if you're new here, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every week. As always, thanks for watching. Talk to you in the next one.
Thanks a lot.